Diddy's legal troubles have taken a new turn, with his legal team now arguing that the prosecutors targeting him are motivated by racism and jealousy over his success as a black artist. Federal prosecutors have fired back against this claim, and with a new $100 million lawsuit on the horizon, things are looking grim for Diddy.
Sean Combs asked the judge in his federal case to throw out one of the charges. He says he's being targeted because he's a black man and the charge is rooted in racism. I look at Combs' argument and his chances of success. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Sean Diddy Combs wants one of the counts in his federal superseding indictment thrown out. Combs argues he's basically being singled out by federal prosecutors because of his race and his success in business. The charge he wants the judge to toss is count.
Diddy's lawyers argue that the law being used against him has historically been applied mainly to black individuals. Their motion outlines how most past cases under this law have involved black defendants, while white individuals committing similar crimes allegedly go unpunished. However, pointing fingers at prosecutors for enforcing the law isn't a valid defense.
Men have largely been prosecuted using the Mann Act over the years, Combs' attorneys write. This case is unprecedented in many ways, but perhaps most notably and most disturbingly, no white person has ever been the target of a remotely similar prosecution. They go on to argue that the sex acts that Combs engaged in with the victims and the sex workers was completely consensual. The government has concocted a criminal case based primarily on allegations that Mr. Combs and two of his longtime girlfriends sometimes brought a third party, a male escort, into their sexual relationship. Combs' lawyers continue. Like many other celebrities, Mr. Combs has had complicated relationships with significant others, as well as with alcohol and drugs throughout his time in the spotlight. But that doesn't make him a racketeer or a sex trafficker. The attorneys also argue that Combs is not guilty of running a RICO enterprise. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York accuses him of being the kingpin of a RICO enterprise, essentially defined as Mr. Combs himself, and claims the purpose of this faux enterprise is to conduct his personal sex life with his girlfriends. Combs' lawyers also argue a charge can be invalid if it's determined the charging decision was based on race.
Diddy's defense seems to be gearing up toward his alleged criminal conduct wasn't criminal. It was his personal business of what was going on in his bedrooms or hotels or wherever the freak-offs occurred. So they're saying that count 3 wasn't transportation to engage in prostitution, but was just him using escorts, male escorts at that, to bring in as a third with his girlfriends. Whereas the government's theory of the case is Diddy used force, fraud, and coercion to make his alleged victims have sex against their will in his freak-offs that he recorded for his own pleasure. Now, Diddy pleaded not guilty to all.
Diddy's legal team appears to be running out of options. In many sexual abuse cases, suspects can deny that the assault ever took place. However, Diddy doesn't have that luxury. Video evidence reportedly exists showing him committing the alleged assault. With that in mind, his only options are to either get the charges dismissed or claim everything was consensual.
I think it has to be the defense, the consent, because look, sometimes you can argue that the sexual activity never happened, right? It wasn't me, defense. But this is not your typical sexual assault case. There are a lot of people there, right? There are people that are arranging the sex workers. There are people that are setting up lights and cameras, booking hotel rooms. Obviously, Diddy has a large entourage. So there's a lot of witnesses there, and a lot of this was allegedly recorded. So I think it's going to be very difficult to argue that it wasn't me. So you're going to have to argue that it was consensual. And we've talked about the line that separates trafficking from consensual sex, that force, fraud, or coercion. So I fully expect the defense to be, this was all consensual. These are all people who are trying to shake Diddy down for money. This is all extortion. That's why they're pursuing these claims. They're just piling on. But really, this is regret, not rape. And I think that's the defense strategy.
Federal prosecutors from the Southern District of New York have responded to Diddy's motion, arguing that his multiple charges prove he wasn't unfairly singled out. They point out that Diddy is facing 3 separate indictments, making it illogical to claim that only one charge is racially motivated while ignoring the others. Prosecutors firmly assert that holding an abuser accountable is not an act of racism.
We're going to start with how they start out in their filing, in their response, writing, quote, offering no more than his say-so The defendant makes the outrageous and illogical claim that federal prosecutors brought one, and only one, of the 3 charges against him on account of his race. Tellingly, the motion fails to mention that the other counts of the very same indictment allege that the defendant engaged in horrific and repeated acts of violence and sexual coercion, harming multiple victims over the course of multiple years. That context alone defeats the motion. And the prosecutors argue that race didn't play a factor into the charges that Combs faced, but rather, he's facing these charges because of his, quote, own violent, abusive, and criminal conduct. And what is that conduct? Let's get a little more specific here, because what makes up the racketeering conspiracy charge, the sex trafficking charge, the prostitution charge? Well, the allegation is that Combs engaged in a pattern of abusing women, verbally, emotionally, physically, sexually, for years. And that included transporting women and commercial sex workers and coercing and forcing women to participate in sex acts for his own desire, that he would use drugs or threats or power to get them to do this, to get them to do what he wanted. And how did he carry all this out? Allegedly using his power, his resources, his business empire to carry all of this out, and his practices are violations of federal laws. So in other words, the government here explains that count 3, the count at issue, that transporting of people for purposes of prostitution, is exactly what makes up the core of this.
In a surprising turn, the only black lawyer on Diddy's legal team, Anthony Rico, quit immediately after filing the motion. Reports suggest that Rico disagreed with making the case about race. After reviewing the evidence against Diddy, he reportedly felt it was in his best interest to step away. Winning this case could have boosted his career, yet he still chose to leave, a move that raises serious questions about the strength of the evidence.
He's doing fine. It's a difficult circumstance. He's making the best of the situation.
A situation one of Diddy's attorneys won't be part of moving forward. Anthony Rico announcing in court docs, under no circumstances can he continue defending the embattled rapper.
This is a serious proceeding with serious consequences, and all of us are addressing it accordingly.
In a motion filed on Thursday, Rico stopped short of revealing why he's stepping down from Diddy's legal team, just months ahead of the music mogul's scheduled trial date in May for sex trafficking and racketeering charges, all of which Diddy's denied.
You know, Dr. King called it the law of unintended consequences. So sometimes the more you push a person down, the stronger they get.
That's Rico speaking up late last year for his now former client. ET's learned the attorney's exit will not affect Diddy's other attorneys, nor their defense strategy.
I told Mr. Combs I'm going to try and get his case to trial as quickly as possible. He has been ready to defend this case since he first found out about this case. Nothing has changed from his perspective.
You're going to hear about my party. They're going to be shutting them down. They're going to probably be arresting me.
After Diddy was arrested, Rico said he provided a high level of legal representation. But now, for reasons unknown, he can under no circumstances effectively serve in the upcoming trial.
Nobody's okay with staying in jail for now.
And high-profile death penalty attorney Anthony Rico. Now, while the pair joined around the same time, Anthony in a court filing on Friday said he's leaving the case. In the filing, Anthony Rico said, quote, "For the reasons set forth below, this motion for withdrawals is filed so that Sean Combs may move forward with his defense and to commence jury selection and trial without any delay. As a result of discussion with lead counsel Mark Agnifilo, this motion for withdrawal of counsel is filed. While I am aware that the local rule requires that an application for withdrawal of counsel is supported and granted, there are sufficient reasons related to protections afforded by the attorney-client privilege for brevity in my application for withdrawal as counsel in this case. Although I have provided Sean Combs with the high level of legal representation expected by the court, under no circumstances can I continue to effectively serve as counsel for Sean Combs," end quote. Now, essentially in legalese, I quit, but I can't go into details because of attorney-client privilege. According to the filing, though, the defense shakeup won't delay the case. Diddy will continue with 5 attorneys. That's Mark Agnifilo, Tenny Garagos, Alexandra Shapiro, Jason A. Driscoll, and Anna S.
Rico was a key player in Diddy's defense, making his sudden exit just 2 months before trial highly suspicious. What did he see that made him walk away? Is the evidence against Diddy truly damning? Industry insiders, including Stephen Smith and Joe Budden, have weighed in on Rico's departure, and no one believes this bodes well for Diddy's chances in court.
It's very, very important that we do that. An attorney walking away Sometimes it's because they don't get the lead chair or one of the lead chairs. Sometimes it's because a client is lying. Sometimes it's because they believe wholeheartedly that the client is going to be guilty and they don't want to be associated with that guilt because that's a loss on their record. It could be a variety of things, but the fact that we are speculating about that when the trial date hasn't even started yet concerns me, because I'm one of those people, ladies and gentlemen, who firmly believes it's virtually impossible to find a jury that's not contaminated by some kind of information that's been put out to the public before a trial begins. I'm not one of those that believes that. May 5th is May 5th. I mean, come on now. That's more than 2 months away. Jury ain't been selected yet. You trying to tell me nobody that's on the jury will have heard that a lawyer backed out of the case? I don't know about y'all, but I find that that's not a good thing for Sean Diddy Combs.
That being said, kind of going back to what potentially the reasoning might be, do you think that it might have been a personal conflict between Diddy and Anthony Rico, or do you think it might have been Anthony Rico with other counsel? But what do you make of all of that?
Potentially, it could be a conflict with the client, right? A disagreement. They just don't get along. The communication is poor. They don't agree on defense strategy. It could be conflict with one of the other lawyers. Obviously, it seems like Agnifilo is the lead on this case, although Rico was certainly his 1B. And I know obviously there's other lawyers on the case. Obviously, a lot of the victims are female. They're going to want female lawyers on the defense team, especially during some of the aggressive cross-examination. That tends to be the conventional wisdom when you're dealing with victims who are alleged victims of assault or abuse. And then it could be a conflict with one of the victims themselves. Maybe Agnifilo, maybe Rico consulted with them or even represented them in such a way that he has to get off the case.
Just 2 days ago, an updated indictment was filed, revealing that 2 more celebrities have been implicated in the alleged abuse of a woman. One of the accused responded on social media, calling the allegation a fabricated lie. He stated that in 2018, when the alleged incident occurred, he was broke, living with his mother, and had no connections to the entertainment industry. He expressed heartbreak for actual victims of abuse while asserting confidence that the truth will eventually clear his name.
Were you at any of the Diddy parties, or did you miss that?
What the? Where did that come from? How did that? Of all questions.
Or did you miss that train?
How did that go?
That train might have left the station,
train took
but
off
you
from
were
the
right
station.
there.
Yeah,
you were right there to get on that.
That train took off from the station for sure.
You were close.
Yeah. I wasn't at that train station.
You left early?
No, that was down the street from me. I wasn't there. No.
Did you ever meet Diddy?
Yo, what the
Bro, yo, I forgot you
He's
actually
like, yo, I've seen pictures with you there.
Diddy's inner circle is starting to turn against him. His former executive assistant, Philip Pines, is speaking out in a new documentary detailing disturbing claims about Diddy's private gatherings. According to Pines, these king nights involve Diddy allegedly abusing men, women, and minors for days on end while demanding to be called the king. Pines claims that Diddy once forced him to have sex with a prostitute as a test of loyalty.
Former assistant to Sean Diddy Combs speaking out in a new interview with new allegations about wild parties and drug use. Eva Pilgrim is here with the story. Good morning, Eva.
Good morning, Michael. At this point, we've all probably heard about these infamous parties. Diddy's assistant now giving us details about what he says were called Wild King Nights.
It's official. I survived what I've been through.
This morning, new details allegedly inside Diddy's world before his shocking arrest. The entertainment mogul now behind bars for federal trafficking and racketeering charges.
It was a circus. He did whatever he wanted, and we were just at his disposal.
Phil Pines was Diddy's senior executive assistant from 2019 to 2021. He says his then boss asked him to purchase supplies for parties dubbed Wild King Nights.
We usually had a laundry list of items that included lights, alcohol, marijuana, ketamine, Molly. Those requests started to become more frequent.
Pines claims many of these parties involved younger women.
A lot of times you'd have him with a younger female, and there's a power dynamic there. a more impressionable girl is easier to reel in. Consent is between the people that are engaging, and I wasn't there in these situations too.
Yes. One of the things is, I mean, the thing that stuck out to me, you mentioned it before, these allegations are so consistent with what the allegations are that are laid out by prosecutors when they describe the freak-offs in their indictment, right? These sex-fueled parties, these drug-fueled parties, the baby oil, the Astroglide, and it makes me wonder, A, do you think Mr. Pines is a cooperating witness for the government? B, if so, do you think he was one of the people that they originally spoke to when they were coming up with this, when they were drafting the indictment and coming up with the charges? Or do you think he's come out after? Because again, I think the timing of the lawsuit's important too, at the end of the year, right now. Talk to me about what you think his role might be.
If I had to guess, I would figure that the feds already talked to him, just because I know from my experience dealing with them how all-encompassing their investigations are. And if he really was his executive assistant from the time frame that they allege in the lawsuit, I can't see a scenario where they wouldn't. I mean, they investigate regular cases to the point that that I'm shocked when I see it as a criminal defense attorney with regular people. When you're talking about a high-profile celebrity case like this, I can't fathom that no one spoke to this individual prior to this. So I would think that they did speak to him, and I can't imagine that he's not a witness.
People who worked closely with Diddy and allegedly helped facilitate his crimes are now testifying against him. How can he continue to deny the accusations? Pines has reportedly provided text messages and other receipts supporting his claims, adding even more weight to the case against Diddy.
After Sean Diddy Combs looking to suppress evidence in his federal trial, senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky is back with the story. Good morning again, Aaron.
And to you, Michael. You'll remember federal agents from Homeland Security Investigations were hardly shy when they raided Sean Combs' opulent homes in Los Angeles and Miami, guns drawn. The jailed music mogul now argues those searches and other searches of his iCloud accounts, electronic devices, and New York City hotel room following his arrest were unconstitutional. His lawyers argue evidence obtained through those searches must be suppressed. Diddy's lawyers say the government presented a grossly distorted picture of reality when applying for the search warrants, omitting certain facts and including salacious details from an unnamed producer that were never credible. Combs has pleaded not guilty to racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and prostitution charges. The defense is also arguing here his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, was a willing participant in drug-fueled sex performances called freak-offs, not coerced as prosecutors allege.
Unable to fight the allegations head-on, Diddy is now trying to go after those who are speaking out against him. Nearly a dozen witnesses have participated in a recent documentary detailing the accusations against him. Meanwhile, 50 Cent is reportedly working on a series that will expose new evidence. In a desperate move to stop more damaging information from coming out, Diddy has filed a $100 million lawsuit against NBC News, possibly in an attempt to intimidate those involved in these projects.
Diddy Combs sues NBC for $100 million over its Peacock documentary about him. According to docs obtained by E! News February 12th, the Bad Boy Records founder filed a lawsuit against NBC Universal seeking $100 million after Peacock, the streaming service owned by the media company, released the documentary Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy. In the filing, Combs, who is currently in jail on sex trafficking and racketeering charges, accuses NBC Universal of defamation and alleged that the company maliciously and recklessly broadcast the documentary, which included claims that the rapper committed crimes like serial murder and sexual assault of minors without having a shred of evidence. The filing reads, in making and broadcasting these falsehoods, among others, defendants seek only to capitalize on the public's appetite for scandal without any regard for the truth and at the expense of Mr. Combs' right to a fair trial.
Prosecutors are also aware that Diddy has allegedly attempted to bribe witnesses. There are reports that Jay-Z's legal team once used a similar tactic, offering witnesses $10,000 each to back out of testifying, which ultimately led to that case being dismissed. However, Diddy's situation is different. Since this is a criminal case pursued by the state, witnesses are legally required to testify, regardless of whether they want to or not.
And all of a sudden, she was escorted away to a separate room by a security guard who simply allegedly said to her, "You know what you're here for." He allegedly locked the door and left her and her friend inside with Sean Combs. And according to her, Sean Combs allegedly forced McCrary's friend to perform oral sex on him, or else he would have them both killed. That's a threat that he allegedly made. And when it came to McCrary, here is what the complaint reads, quote, Combs soon turned his sights to Miss McCrary and forced her to take her clothes off, again under the threat of violence. Once she was undressed, Combs forced himself on her and began to sexually assault her. Combs fondled, molested, and ultimately raped Miss McCrary, all while she was begging him to stop. Soon, and likely due to Miss McCrary's cries, the door opened and the security guard from earlier came in to ask if everything was all right. Miss McCrary's friend took the opportunity to rush out of the recently locked door. Miss McCrary, however, could not move as Mr. Combs was still on top of her. Combs got off Miss McCrary to talk to the security guard. He left the room but told Miss McCrary to stay, otherwise she would be killed. After about half an hour of sitting in the dark room by herself, another security guard came and told her that she could leave. Miss McCrary gathered her things and left immediately and called a taxi back to her dormitory in downtown.
Even while in custody, Diddy's behavior is reportedly raising eyebrows. Allegations have surfaced that he has been communicating with female inmates at the Metropolitan Detention Center through a peephole in his cell.
The latest on Sean Diddy Combs, prosecutors are accusing Combs of trying to contact prospective witnesses and obstruct the case against him. Our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Kotursky, is here with more on that. Good morning to you, Aaron.
Good morning, Robin. Sean Combs is going to be asking a judge this week to release him on bail, but prosecutors now say the argument for detention has only gotten stronger. This morning, federal prosecutors are accusing Sean Diddy Combs of escalating his attempts to influence the jury pool and subvert his criminal case. Almost immediately after arriving at the federal jail in Brooklyn, prosecutors say Combs started using telephone accounts of at least 8 other inmates to call people not on his approved contact list. Prosecutors allege Combs frequently instructs family members and his attorneys to add other individuals via three-way call, which is not allowed. On some of those calls, prosecutors say Combs is explicit about his intention to use public statements to sway potential jurors, including this Instagram post by Diddy's kids.
Happy birthday to Daddy.
Prosecutors say Combs enlisted family members to plan and execute a social media campaign around the defendant's birthday, the first time we heard his voice from behind bars.
Oh, thank y'all for being strong and thank y'all for being by my side and supporting me. I love y'all. I got the best family in the world.
Prosecutors say Combs then monitored audience engagement from the video.
She called the other group member Gunn 58 times trying to get her to stop the lawsuit against Diddy.
She ain't the only one he was trying to get in contact with. You understand? He sent somebody through somebody else to try to get in contact with me, telling me enough is enough. Oh, okay. You tell Big Mama that enough is enough. You can't tell Wolf Mama enough is enough. You tell D Ferg Mama enough is enough. You understand? You tell all those people who supported you and they survivors, enough is enough.
You didn't tell me about this. So he tried to get somebody to reach out to you?
No, I got a phone call from Kirk Burroughs. And Kirk Burroughs, and I ain't gonna even get this guy no play. Not Kirk Burroughs, but one of the Puff dudes that I know that's real close to him said, Kirk told me, yo, he wanna reach out to you, Gene. He wanna speak to you. I said, speak to me for what? What do you want to speak to me for? If he's trying to speak to me, it's for Puff. Point blank. I know the dude. I know how close he is to Puff. He's been with Puff from day one. So he ain't got nothing to say to me.
According to our sources, Diddy is not being housed in a solitary cell. And what's more surprising, the sources say he could still get his freak on, so to speak. There is apparently a secret system that inmates on the block all seem to know about, a way to spy on the female inmates who are housed one floor below them. I thought there's no way there could be some way to contact the ladies down below, but tell me how it worked.
It's a dormitory Puff Daddy's in. He's not in cells. So there's a big dorm with a bunch of bunks, and then there's a little room where you go into, and it's like a workout area. But it's not really a yard, you would say. It's just like with gates, like you see right there in the building. And you could literally lay down and the females are right below you, and you could just yell at them and they yell back, and basically like you could kind of see them and they could see you a little bit, but you have to watch out for the guards, obviously. But you can talk with them and, you know, show each other some things sometimes, which I never did any of that.
So what do you think? Is Diddy desperately grasping at straws with his racism defense, or does he have a legitimate case? With his own team turning against him, new allegations surfacing, and even accusations of witness tampering, it seems like his options are rapidly running out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on this unfolding drama.